Hi, and welcome to Just Thinking. I'm Mary Greendale. Well, I've asked a few folks who are running for local town offices to join me tonight to talk about why did they run, why do they run, and what they might suggest about getting other people to run. Because truthfully, all of us who are sitting here, and I'm including myself because I am on the ballot this year, we are running uncontested. And there are other offices that are not represented here tonight, but they also are running uncontested. And I honestly don't remember in all the years that I've done this show that I've run into this situation. So it kind of gobsmacked me with, well, what do I do with this? I think what we're going to try to do anyway is to make people understand that it's really it's not rocket science to serve on these committees. Let's try to dig down with what do we actually do, and if it's scary, is there a way to make people less afraid of running, and so forth and so on. So let's start with introductions, and I'm going to start to my left, and Sarah, if you just introduce yourself and what you're running for.
I'm Sarah Fitzgerald, and I'm running for the school committee.
And you are not an incumbent. You have an open seat.
That's correct.
And who was in that seat, or one of the two?
I believe it's Stacey Raffi and Catherine Savard.
Both stepped down.
Rolling off, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Dan, Alfred, and I'm also running for school committee. And so Catherine and Stacey are the ones that stepped off.
Okay, and you are currently serving on the Finance Committee after how many years?
11 years.
11 years.
So
okay, this is good.
It's kind of a weird parallel world.
Well, a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. That's okay, though. Michelle?
Michelle Zeamer. I'm running for Finance Committee, and I've been on the Finance Committee for 12 years.
So you're running for re-election?
Re-election, yes.
Okay. And Julie?
Julie Winston, running for Finance Committee. I just am coming up on a year after an appointment, so I filled a seat that was vacant and now running for a 3-year seat.
Okay, good. How have you liked it so far? Well, here you are. We'll assume it hasn't been too bad. Okay.
Here I am is right.
Yeah, okay. So, Julie, I think you'd be a good person to ask this question of, since it's not been that long since you've been on the board or on the committee. What's your experience been like to date?
It's been really interesting because, you get a lot of your news feed in this town from, social media or from talking to people in your community, whether it's you're on the sidelines of sports for me because I have kids in the school system, or friends. And the news feed can be, a little gossipy or a little, people complain here and there. And you being on a committee, you're actually learning more about what the truth of it all is and why things are happening the way that they're happening. And so I've actually really liked that part of it, where I've been able to learn a lot about the town, how it's working, and how the different departments do function with one another. And then when opportunities arise, I can share that with other people, trying to, squash some of the, more gossipy kind of ways people talk about the town.
Okay. Sarah, what did you think when you were going through the thought process of, I think I will? We talked earlier that you had been involved in volunteer activities with the school over the years. Mm-hmm. What about that experience led you to think that this might be another route?
I've been involved in the schools for about 10 years as a volunteer, and most recently as the PTO president. So I've seen a lot. I've seen how the administration gets along, the staff, how we can support students. So it just seemed like this would be another way to be involved in a kind of a newer role for me. So.
Okay, Dan, so why did you decide to move from the Finance Committee to the school committee?
So I didn't really have any plans to run for the school committee, though when I saw that both Stacey and Catherine weren't running, I thought it might be an opportunity for me to step up and bring my financial skills and understanding of the whole town's budget to the school committee and help play there. I think over the next 3 to 5 years, one of the biggest issues of the schools will be financial. I mean, it's always financial. It's always financial, but yeah. Especially with we're going into a contract negotiation year where the schools are still looking at a high school. So there are a lot of big expenditures that I think I can help out with. So I think that I've seen a lot of there's definitely been a lot of things that have been concerning at the schools, and so as a parent of two younger children, I'd like to try to help to solve those and keep our school strong.
Okay. And Michelle, why? After 12 years, are you still hanging in there with the Finance Committee?
If I didn't feel I was contributing, I wouldn't be running for reelection, but I feel that I am contributing. I was on other boards and committees before the Finance Committee, so I feel that what I contribute is a knowledge of being on the other side of the table. I worked for the Framingham Board of Health for 9 years, so I know what it's like to be a town employee also. So I just feel that I can bring something, to the town through the Finance Committee.
Okay, you think you've got it you think you figured it out now, right? You know
Just
how
about.
Okay,
Just
good,
about.
good. Another term and everything will be great. So how do you view your role? Think about that question. What do you think the role of the volunteer is? And this would probably be more to your end of the world in the schools, because you will have staff. I know for our department, I'm on the Board of Assessors, we do have staff. You can only imagine having staff. But the role as a volunteer, what is it? What are we supposed to be doing in relationship to the voters?
Well, we're volunteers. For instance, that I know of, every school committee in the state are either volunteers or stipend paid positions. You don't have full-time school committee members, right?
No, but you have a staff that you have to navigate. It's a little bit different than not navigating. You don't have to worry about the management of people.
But the state is also very clear with the statutory authorities of the school committee and the select board and the finance committee. So, the state has basically charged the school committee with setting, budgeting, hiring, firing, and evaluating the superintendent, and then setting policy for the school system.
That's what it says on paper.
That's what it says on paper. And through those mechanisms, as we know, a budget can be policy, right?
It is the enactment of policy.
But it is how you sort of set the path forward. So through policy, through the budget, you can help sort of guide the direction of the paid staff. Through policies, you can also try to help achieve certain goals, and then ultimately you want to have and ensure that you have in place a leader that can lead the department, appropriately and adequately in the way that you feel is going to best serve the district.
How about you, Sarah? How do you see the role?
So, there's the clear definition of policy and budget and hiring and retaining the superintendent. But it's also kind of an oversight role where we've got the superintendent functions more almost like a CEO of the district, and then we are the overseers of the policy and how that message gets across, how we want the district to run. I think it sets the tone for how we see and value our education and educators. So when you're looking at the budget and trying to figure out where are we valuing, where are we putting the money, how can we work with the town to make sure that we are ensuring the best education for our kids.
What do you see the role, again, as your volunteers, which means you're spending your own time when you could either be relaxing or doing some hobby or whatever it is. What do you see the role and what's the workload like for your position, Michelle?
Our role, I believe, is more of a bringing everyone together, because we hear each department, each committee, they come to us with their budget, and then we have to take it all. We know, without going into all the details,
right,
we know how much money we have, and we have to divvy up that money. So we have to know what's going on in the whole town. We can't just look at the schools or look at the budget of Parks and Rec. We have to look at everything as a whole. So I think our role is just pulling everything together, figuring out what's realistic, and we can't just look at the moment. We have to look forward. We're already, at our meetings, we're talking about FY25, even though we're getting into FY24. So it's keep knowing what's going on. We also, I personally, speaking for myself, feel that I represent the residents. I'm there and I'm hearing it, and I'm thinking, what is town meeting going to want? We're going to have 2 override questions on the ballot in May, and this is May. Yeah, it creeps up on me. And so you have to think, what are people that come to vote? How are they going to see this? Our role isn't to advocate, for or against, overrides, but it's to know how people are going to react, how the money is best spent.
What's the workload like?
Now we have 1 meeting a week. We get a lot of spreadsheets in the mail. They're constantly evolving. And I try to do those over the weekend if we get them in time. Sometimes it comes right before a meeting. I don't know, 2-3 hours a week, not including the meetings. I don't know. It varies. October town meeting's different than May town meeting. November is different than April and May.
Okay. Julie, how about you? So as a volunteer, do you think that the workload is reasonable?
I do. I think that you can volunteer for a role like this and do, and I hate to say it this way, but you can do as little or as much work as you want. And what I mean is that when you do as little work as you want, it's like you're attending meetings and you're listening and you're learning. And if you want to do a lot more than that, you can really dig into lots of historical documents and talk to a lot of people in town. Like, you can really take it very deep. But if you want to still be an active contributor, you can, really just stay current with what's happening and attend the meetings and do some reading in between. So I think it's very realistic and reasonable.
Do people come up and ask you questions about the Finance Committee?
Sometimes. I've actually, now that people know that I am on, it's only been less than a year, I do get questions from people if I'm out walking my dogs and I run into someone who knows I was appointed. They'll ask questions about most often the schools or the new high school, or what do you know about this, and sometimes I know what the answer might be, and a lot of the times right now I'm just like, I'm not quite sure, and I'll look into it and get back to you.
Okay.
There's a lot to learn.
People talk to you about Finance Committee issues? Do they call you? Do they
I just keep walking.
Yeah. You don't have a dog, right?
I asked them about Finance Committee, and I'll look at where.
No, I mean, people do. I think that, again, as Julie said, the time commitment is almost as much as you want to put into it. You can either put nothing into it, or you can put, tons into it, and it's reasonable. And especially, I mean, the 2 boards sort of that are represented here, schools and Finance Committee, are 2 of the more sort of time demanding jobs, along with the select board. But there are a lot of other jobs a lot of other roles in town, either appointed or elected boards that are, meet once a month and have a much smaller time commitment expected. So if you're thinking about, people getting involved in running, I mean, it's manageable.
Yeah, we meet every week. We meet more than we did. It's funny how things evolve. But at any rate, have you ever talked to any of you? Has anybody tried to recruit somebody to run for an office? And if you have, what's been the reaction from them?
Recruit someone to run? No.
I have. I've offered to people who I might actually see people on Holliston Happy or one of those pages, and they're like deep and heavy into like some debate about who knows what. And if it's someone I know, I might pop them a message and say, like, have you ever considered, you're obviously very passionate about whatever it is. Have you ever considered running for something in town? And I did ask someone recently about school committee. It was before anyone had put papers in. And she said she was interested but a little intimidated, and so she actually met with a former school committee member who suggested so many different options to get more involved, whether it was through PTO or there was like some other group that they had suggested. And so she's looking into other ways to kind of get her feet wet. And I think that those types of jobs are far less known to people who might be willing to do something but just don't want to run a campaign, or they don't feel ready to be elected for something. There are so many jobs out there that I think are kind of hidden secrets.
Well, within town government, there are at least 30 or 40 different boards and committees that are appointed that are almost invisible. That you just don't even think about, whether it's the traffic advisory committee or, something else. So there are an awful lot of opportunities out there, let's say. So let's go to the big question that I wanted to ask of you folks. So things are a little bit dicey at the schools right now. There are some high tensions. And at least from the little bit that I know from the outside, it does seem to come down to management kinds of things between teachers and the administration. You don't have any authority in that situation. You can't go in and say, okay, everybody shape up here. How do you influence that? How do you have as residents, our perspectives represented in what is, an inside job, so to speak? You rehearsed, so you have notes. So you go first, and let Sarah think.
So I think to say that we have no authority is while not totally inaccurate, is somewhat is what's the word? There's more that the school committee can do, even officially, right? I mean, again, the school committee hires, fires, and evaluates. The superintendent sets goals, sets, so, and that's the top, that's the CEO, that's the leadership, right? And so I think that, the overall feel of a system, of a company or a school system, starts at the top. Additionally, the school committee members are directly involved in contract negotiations with our unions. And I think that there are many different ways that, whether it's just through listening, through trying to help deconflict situations by connecting the right people and making people, hearing people out and sort of getting that through the system can improve a bad situation. It's tough. I mean, look, it's been tough since since COVID, and COVID has had a lot of negative impacts on children, mm-hmm. on the morale of staff, not just in Holliston, but everywhere. Yeah. And so, I think as we hopefully, have kind of are moving through COVID, now that COVID is over, but, we're just living with it now rather than trying to react to it. My hope is that we'll be able to get to a position where we can, just sort of return to some more sense of a normalcy. But it's going to be tough. And, with where the economy is, where inflation is, it's definitely going to be a tough situation. But hopefully there are things that can be done to support, our great teachers and staff. And, whether it's through the budget, looking to get them more support, whether it's through policy, trying to, help support them. I think that there are many ways that we can play a role.
What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Dan said. I do think there are opportunities, again, to listen and to really understand what we can do to make. I think we have some really amazing teachers who put their heart into educating our kids, and we need to figure out how to best support them. And some of that is, through budget and things like that. But I do think there's other ways to make sure that their voices are being heard and that we understand what makes them tick and what they need.
I met a woman this weekend who is a teacher, someone I don't know. She's new to the community. She comes from another country. And she just wants it to be peaceful, you know. So there's apparently just sort of a sense of disruption or turmoil or not normalcy. And it could be all COVID. It could be a whole bunch of different things. But I think, as you say, it's going to be hard because once it gets, you know, there's a certain amount of momentum to something that becomes tumultuous. And I think it will be hard. But
when people are happy and content with their jobs, they tend to put more into their jobs, and
Sure.
they tend to do a better job.
yeah,
And so I think that, you know, making people feel like they, you know, that they really want to come to work in the morning is the top thing that we can do.
yeah, I know. Unfortunately, it's dealing with our kids. And so there's a lot of passion that comes into the mix from both sides. You know, it's not just a nuts and bolts kind of thing. But going back to, so town elections, so people do you think that people know what's going on? You obviously spoke to the fact that, and I read them too, you get misinformation on Facebook all the time. And you could spend your life trying to, you know, respond to those things. So how do we get information to people?
I miss the days of I'm dating myself now.
The Metro West
The
News.
Metro West Daily News, when we had a Holliston reporter
Yeah.
who attended our meetings. And, you know, the next day you'd open the paper and there'd be a report of the Board of Health meeting or, you know, it was much easier. Of course, it was before the rise of the internet. But now no one covers anything.
Anything, yeah.
You know, I mean, the Holliston Reporter, I think they do a good job, but they're limited staff-wise. And I just feel that people, they're getting their information from, as you said, rumors, the internet. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago, someone was talking about water rates and the infrastructure fee, and I corrected them, you know, kind of briefly explaining enterprise fund, and they told me I was wrong.
I love it. Oh dear, yeah, well there is that. That's a whole different phenomenon where everybody's an expert.
Right.
I don't think we're going to fix that. But what do you think we collectively as officials, because, and I am thinking anyway, that perhaps there is a way and perhaps there is a role for the entire congregation of 44 elected officials to get information out from our perspective, not from the town administrator's perspective in his newsletter or the school departments in their newsletter, but rather just to our peers or whatever. Because the days of the newspapers, if we can change that, that would be marvelous. Right. You know, and there are some organizations that are trying to do that. And there is some conversation going on in town about trying to do that, but until then, anybody got any ideas of how you get information out there so people do know what's going on and then can take an active interest in it? What used to happen is if you had the newspaper, you got to read people's names. So you learned that John Smith behaved this way and Susie Bell would behave that way, and you learned how they thought. So you kind of had an idea of who these people were and what the job was. There's none of that now.
All of this information, though, is out there. I mean, it takes time, but all of these meetings are recorded and put on the website.
But that's just...
It's absolutely true, but there's a new resource in town that I think was in one of the latest newsletters where you can actually go and you can sign up to get news alerts right to your email when a new agenda or a new piece of information is. And so I think delivering it directly to people's inboxes, I think we can eventually evolve that over time to deliver maybe, you know, summary pieces from boards and committees. But I think that this also ties back to your question on why people don't run. Because I think that, unfortunately, people react so negatively sometimes to things that are proposed and get very sort of emotional about things, and it makes it an attack the elected officials who are just trying to do their volunteer job, then other people see this and they're like, well, I don't want that.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a big impediment. So asking, you know, the citizens of Holliston, hey, you can be against something, but just, do it respectfully. Make your points known and make your points and just be respectful.
You need to have like a town PR person in a way where they're the known person of fact, whether they are using social media as a platform or the town website as the source. But thinking about like the schools, seniors should probably have some education in town government and this town government because they live in this town and they're all turning 18 and don't even know how to register unless their parents tell them to. So maybe it's something that can be added to the school system where it's like you take a 1-hour seminar in your senior year to learn about the town and where to get information, but part of that is also making sure the information is readily available for them to get through a resource that's factual, like the website, like the town website.
I think it's hard also, excuse me, because sometimes I feel like there's so much information. So if it's coming through email, I get so many emails for either my 3 kids or what's going on at the schools. And so sometimes it's hard to parse through to find out what is the most relevant and the information that I need to actually know. So there's a delicate balance of being able to provide the information in an easy format. And then you've got the flip side where you could be overselling all of the information and it's too much.
I think the challenge comes for committees like the Board of Health or the Parks and Rec Department or even the Finance Committee, because I don't think that those are just, the chit-chat conversation kinds of things. I'm sure the schools, there's a lot of stuff, but when your kids are out of school, that all dries up, and literally you know nothing. I mean, it's hard to believe. But I can say, do you get anything? Well, sometimes because you're on the inside, you know more.
I'm the liaison to the school
so
committee.
You do. But, if I don't go out of my way to find out anything about it, I know nothing. So there is an in-between, But kids are what keep it all moving along. But today, we have more seniors than we have kids, So it's something that there's change that has to be adjusted to, too.
You get 250 people at a highly attended town meeting where you're voting on $70 million of spending.
Yeah.
It's in people's tax dollars. I mean, it's just people are really busy. And it's tough to always pay attention to everything unless it's something that directly is impacting you or your kid.
Electronic voting, remote voting for town meeting would be...
Well, we could change to a representative town meeting and do remote voting and things like that, but there are definitely downsides to those methods too. Actually,
the structure of town government is probably one of the things where we probably need the most conversation. Is the structure the way that it should be for today? But that's...
If only we had a committee that could have looked into that.
And yet most of the people probably have no idea what he's talking about.
No, the bottom line being that there was a governance
committee. No, I know, but what I'm saying is like
but
most people won't know what he's talking about because they didn't know that such a committee ever existed.
But only 100 people are going to watch this, so...
Oh,
if that.
The only thing you can guarantee is that if it's on YouTube, that's where it will be watched, and then it becomes a whole different vehicle. But at any rate, no, I just find it... I find it really challenging right now because I'm doing the town history and I'm immersed in all of these previous town meetings. The numbers don't startle me. There was never a day in which you got, at every meeting, more than 200 people. 40, 50, whatever. 100, we finally had to push the quorum up, that kind of thing. Big votes, yeah, you would for fluoride or you would for sewers. There's a tale of woe. But I think I may just, how you have things with how many marbles are in the jar? I'm gonna do how many sewer questions have come up at town meetings in our history. That's gonna be the challenge. But those kinds of conversations, for the big ones, you would get people, but it's not any different today than it was before. The only time it was really very different was during the 70s. When money was real. Since Prop 2.5, money's not real anymore. There's a cap. And in order to start doing things like new schools, you've got to go through the whole override process. Back in the 70s, that wasn't the case. Somebody was sitting at the front room saying, nope, we've just gone over, kind of thing. We're not balanced. We need to do something. Yeah, we could just spend money. So it was a free-for-all. It was a real free-for-all. You end up with years when your tax rate is, $142 per thousand. Valuations were a whole lot less, but still, you would still get ugly things like that. So today's just a different day, but the numbers of people who are engaged is pretty much the same, which I think is just sort of interesting. Maybe it's just a critical mass. Maybe that's just what it's supposed to be. Who knows? So any other thoughts about the upcoming election? Which, we should have a huge turnout, right?
Well, there are 2 override questions,
Yeah.
so there should be some
big
turnout for there.
Usually that's around 1,900 people.
That would be ginormous for a town election.
elections.
Yep.
How do people know about these questions at this point, though? I haven't seen, other than being on Finance Committee, I have not seen anything anywhere about an upcoming 2 ballot question
Yeah, but
election.
once it passes town meeting, if it passes town meeting, then it's got feet. Right now
So
it's
they
just
have
a
1
thought.
week to kind of
So,
get it.
so once they get to town meeting on the 15th, then they've got, it's real. And now they've got 2 weeks to figure out.
Well, it'll still be on the ballot whether it passes town meeting or not. And
Right, but
it's a question of whether you could then
it's
be brought up
valid
at
or
a future town meeting. But yeah, as soon as people will start to concentrate, once the Finance Committee report and the full sort of report is published.
everything is out there.
The warrant, I do believe, has been published.
It is out.
But people will start to focus on it. But again, it's just trying to get through the week ahead, right? for
It's
most
May
people.
1st, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Town meeting's in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be next week,
Supposed to
right?
be next week.
So, I'm not sure it did us any favors by pushing it off a week, but
Well, and
that's
then there's
okay.
only a week between town meeting and the election, so.
Isn't it a little more than that? It's the 20, isn't it the 26th-ish is sort of the
No,
election?
that's Memorial Day.
No, okay.
It's the week before, isn't it?
23rd is the
23rd.
23rd, okay, so it is only 1 week.
Yeah.
Well, surprise, surprise. Okay, that's going to be interesting.
Uh-huh.
All right, anybody else have any thoughts they want to add? No? Okay. Well, next year, see if you can recruit somebody to run for something, just for fun. I've done it in the past, and it's not easy. And you usually have to pick somebody that has some modicum of interest for some reason, that has some particular interest. But anyway, thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate your time. And we will look ahead. As was said, we have town meeting coming up on the 15th. And then a week later, on the Tuesday, we will have the election. And yes, there are 2 override questions. How about that for boosting numbers? Okay, that'll do it. Thanks so much for joining me. Catch you next time. Thanks.